Hey, it's Tyler with Survival Dispatch. Let's talk about radio options that are not ham radio specific. Stick with me. Clearly, in my mind, ham radio is the answer, right? It's an autonomous device that if the whole network goes down, you can still talk point to point. If the network's not down, you can talk point to network to point. So it gives you the ability to have a massive amount of redundancy against terrorism or earthquakes or failure and that kind of thing. The negative is it really only works line of sight for the most part, unless you do have an internet or repeaters linked or some other form of more advanced technological compatibility in there. So it's a phenomenal plan B. I love ham radios. Now, I get that not everyone wants to do ham radios. Yes, you can go to hamstudy.org and study all the questions for 4 hours on a Saturday, take the test next week. But for those of you that want to do that, you don't want to have any kind of studying, you just want to grab a radio and go, there's 2 or 3 main options. One of them is CBs. Now you're talking to a bunch of truckers. One of them is FRS. Now you're talking to little kids with those little push walkie-talkie radios you get at Walmart. And one of them is GMRS. So FRS is Family Mobile Radio Services. Those are those little cheap radios that you get at Walmart. They are restricted or stunted either by wattage output or antenna size to 0.5 watt in the first, I think, 1 to 3 frequencies, and I think it's only 1 to 3 maximum watts for the remaining frequencies that are allowed. Doesn't mean you don't have the capacity to just grab a ham radio and turn it up, but I don't think that's legal. So having said that, you've got a lot of restrictions. That's part of why they don't work very well, but that gives a lot of people the ability to have these radio services, FRS, and talk to each other in a area without talking to the people outside of that area, right? So it's kind of like Wi-Fi. It attenuates and it absorbs into things easy, which means it works great in your house and it sucks outside of your house. FRS is kind of the same way. It's great in your backyard when your kids are talking to each other, but kind of hard to talk down the street. Now, that's only not because of the frequency, it's because the radios have stunted antennas and the wattage is low. So if we step it up a notch and we talk about GMRS, GMRS is General Mobile Radio, and it is a dedicated bank of frequencies in the whole ultra high frequency band or realm, UHF, that is going to give us a little more point to point. Think of it more like COP or emergency communication. Only when you have VHF, which is very high frequency, you have less attenuation, which is the act of your radio frequency absorbing into things, than ultra high frequency. And ultra high frequency attenuates more, so it absorbs into water in the air, mountains, trees, that kind of stuff. And the higher the frequency, the more attenuation. The lower the frequency, the more it's going to punch through. What that lets you know is if you're in a really tree covered area, you're talking point to point through trees without compensating for the curvature of the earth. Yes, it's curved. I know I said it. Then you want to use ultra high frequency. You're going to want to get into, you want to use very high frequency. You want to get it into ham radio to get access to that. Ultra high frequency, which is in the 400-ish megahertz range, is where we find GMRS. GMRS, the cool thing about this is there's a dedicated set of frequencies that are assigned to channels. All you got to do is buy it and turn it on. So I've got this Retevis. I hope I'm saying that right. Who really knows, right? So I've got these Retevis radios.
Welcome. Channel mode.
That's creepy. Like Children of the Corn creepy. Currently, let's talk a little bit about the radio and then we'll talk about communications. Right now, I've got high wattage output on it. I gotta turn it off, turn it back on.
Welcome. Channel mode.
It's locked. It's a narrow band. The frequency on channel number 1 is 462.56250. That's an ultra high frequency. I know because it's 462. And anyway, so if you want to change the look of that, you just hit, you got to unlock it. Yeah, that helps. Lock button, hold that down.
Unlock.
So once it's unlocked, if you want to change this to know which frequency you're at,
Frequency mode.
you change it to frequency mode. Now, I can listen on these frequencies, but I cannot transmit on these frequencies. So with these Retevis radios, they are transmittable to GMRS only. Right? They can transmit on GMRS only. So I can go and I can listen to emergency channels. I can listen to NOAA, listen to the weather station, but I can't communicate on them because they are resisted on the chipset, keeps me from communicating. So I can either type in the actual frequency or I can go back to memory mode. This V is voice, variable frequency oscillator, that's channel mode, and M is memory.
Channel mode.
Go back to memory and now I can communicate on channel 1. Right now I've got 2 banks, bank number 1 and bank number 2, so I can communicate on 1. See the other radio grabbing it. Or I can switch to the B band and communicate on number 2. Now this is going to receive it as well because it's listening on both. Nope, I lied. Now it doesn't. Okay, so that gives you the ability to communicate on 2 bands and switch between frequencies quick. So let's say you are on channel 1 and you want to talk quickly on channel 5. So I'm going to grab this second radio, I'm going to communicate on channel 1, go to channel 5, push the down button.
160.
60, let's go back.
60, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Okay, now I've got 1 radio on channel 1 and 1 on channel 5. So using this second radio, maybe I'm listening to 2 networks. Network number 1 is channel 1. So we go from A band and B band. A is the top, B is the bottom. Go to A band, we send a message on the first network. Switch it to the B band. Send a message on the second network. Nobody's listening because I got to switch this one over here too. So let's make it number 5.
3, 4, 5.
Now I can communicate. All right, that was a little complicated. For those of you that are a little more advanced, I'm sure that you're following me. So what this gives me is a grab and go trunk radio that can only communicate on GMRS, which means ham radio operators can listen and talk to me. If I'm on GMRS, and other GMRS radios can listen and talk to me. And it kind of gives you this chunk of space that you can communicate without too much hassle. A quick note, this is the frequency that a lot of the road construction people will use. So you want to listen to them, hit the scan button. Okay. Or if you don't want to listen to them, change to another channel because you've got plenty of options in here. Okay, in order to scan, you're just going to hold the second function right here. It's the button right next to number 3. Hold it down.
Scanning begin.
Okay, now it's scanning. So I'll grab this other radio and I'm going to transmit on frequency number 1. Nothing. Nothing. Hold it down. When it gets to channel number 1, oh, sorry, I was on 5, so it caught me on channel number 5. So that's a good way to figure out where your buddies are at. Stick it on the channel mode. Now, as a quick note, it's going to continue to scan unless you stop it. So if I hold this down again, when it gets to channel 5, it grabs it. Now if I want to pick it up and start talking, that way I can communicate. And then that should stop the scan, and yes, it did. So it'll continue to scan. It'll basically grab your frequency for about 4 seconds and it'll let you listen to it and then start scanning again. So these radios are a basic entryway to get in to ham radio communications. The positives, they're super cheap. They're fairly well built. They're a lot like a Baofeng. They have all the basic functions. You can grab a bucket of these, give them to all your buddies. Just say, hey, we're going to talk on channel 1. And if that gets fouled up, go to channel 5. You can pre-program them. I like to program these. Hold the lock button down.
Lock.
Then all my kids have to do is turn them on and use them, right? They don't jack stuff up. There is some lights on the side of this guy. Audio input. This is nice for programming. You don't need to program a GMRS radio. It's just going to come pre-programmed. But you might need to update firmware.
On.
This is the weather channel, which is nice as well.
Off.
That's your light button. So you got to push your talk button on the side. You've got your light button, and you've got your weather channel on and off.
On.
And then
Vision Institute. The LASIK Vision Institute has
So-
performed over 1.3 million LASIK procedures, and we
Off.
if you tap it once, it goes to the weather channel. You can scan up and down between the weather channels. It's preset frequencies for NOAA. If you hold it down, it goes to FM radio.
Off.
So that makes it a really good way to monitor if there's an earthquake or a hurricane or that kind of thing. Okay, so that's the Retevis radios. I think they're a decent buy given what they are. I want to say these are like $30-something. Don't quote me on it. Here's a negative. The antennas don't detach. I, being a ham radio operator, a little more advanced operator, I want the ability to put J-poles in, add that kind of stuff. At the same time, you're not buying these super cheap radios because you want to do advanced things. If you have the desire to do advanced things, get the model that gives you the ability to do advanced things. But if you just need a plug and play option, talking on a ranch, talking on a homestead, talking in a bug out situation, grab these little Retevises, Retevis, and man, who knows. Anyway, great radios. Go check them out. If you have any comments, questions, concerns down below, leave me questions and all that silly stuff. I'll get down there and talk to you as well. Also, in the next video, I want to check out these radios over here. So stick with me.